Jason, at the end of the book, you gave tips on how to talk to a teen who got into this culture. Without spoiling too much from the book, can you give us some of those tips? What can we do? What can we say if we have family members or a friend who identifies as trans?
Most importantly, instead of something to say, listen to them, listen to their
Okay.
story and help them to listen to their story. What I try to say is try to listen to the gender dysphoria, with a reverent curiosity. When did you start feeling this way? Wow, I mean, that must be hard. When does the dysphoria tend to be triggered for you? Man, that must be difficult. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm sure it was probably a little scary to share that with me because you probably thought that I'd reject you and say that you're crazy and a sinner and all this stuff for feeling this stuff. We need to take the role of listener first, instead of like, well, here's what the chromosomes say, and I'm going to disprove this. We've got to distinguish gender theory from gender dysphoria. Gender theory is this philosophical agenda rooted in Marxism and second wave feminism that is really a false anthropology. Gender dysphoria, more often than not, are sincere people really wrestling with the sense of identity and community and who am I and why don't I feel like I fit at home in my own body. They're not trying to overturn gender norms. They're just trying to understand themselves and their lived experience. And if they think that all we have to offer them is a rebuttal and a refutal, why would they want to enter a church and spend some time before the tabernacle asking God what he thinks about this? So our first role is to help them listen. Maybe where's this stuff coming from? When did you start feeling this? And sometimes the roots could be clear. I know one boy who told me that his sisters are all loved and he's all the black sheep of the family. And I said, do you think if you were born a girl, you would have been loved the way your sisters are loved? And he said, oh, I know that I would have been. And for me, it was kind of clear there that he wasn't aching to be a woman. He was just aching to be loved, but femaleness was the ticket to finding that love. And so sometimes the root is close to the surface. Sometimes it's deeper. Sometimes it's a trauma response, a dissociation from the body. Sometimes the roots are unclear. But what you should say to that person is like, look, I feel like I'm meeting you in chapter 8 of your life, but I haven't had the chance to learn about chapters 1 through 7, but I'd really like to. Can we go get some coffee? And so in the meantime, do a lot of listening and then go do your homework. Get the book, research it online, watch the stuff we've got at chastity.com. and do your homework and help them. Look, I don't understand all these terms. So if you could just be patient with me, like when I hear the word trans woman, I think it's a woman who's transitioning, but you're saying it's a man. Like, I don't understand this. Please be patient with me. I love you. They need that. They need to understand we've got ears and not just a mouth.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you are able to navigate that, diba? Understanding these objective realities, but at the same time listening to the individual person, right? I've heard, I think it was Sherry Weddell who said this, that never accept a label in place of a story. And I think you're able to embody that really well. I guess there are two dangers that I see we need to avoid. I'm a youth minister, so this is something that I also get to see. I think the first extreme that we want to avoid is to be overly rigid to the point of condemnation, the point of rejection, the point of calling everyone sinful, even though we don't really know their story yet. And then the other extreme is like overly loose to the point of compromise. We want to welcome everyone, but at the same time, we don't really stand up for the truth anymore, and so on. So maybe could you speak to that a little more? Like, how do we navigate that? So as we listen, for example, listen to the individual stories of the people that we encounter, are there other ways that we could prepare even before we get to meet them? Are there, like in the case of me, a youth minister, or in the case of someone like a family member, a parent, most especially?
Yeah. Well, one is to realize this is going to be a little bit more of a marathon than a sprint. And so keep that in mind beforehand. It's not like, okay, I'm looking for that perfect conversation. It's like, no, I've got to build a friendship here. And it is difficult. It's like a tightrope. Like, I don't want to be too lenient, but then I don't want to be all super rigid. I've got to kind of walking this ridge line. Because if we're giving people love, but we're not giving them the truth, it's simply false compassion. But we need to have enough of a relationship, hopefully, with them that they're able to see that, I'm willing to challenge your viewpoints on this because I love you. And I'm not challenging you because I hate you and I disrespect you, but because I love you enough to tell you the truth. Because if you love somebody, you can't lie to them. I mean, what kind of relationship is that? And so it might sting a little bit sometimes, but you want to be understanding that every case is kind of unique. So begin with great sensitivity, almost like treating a burn victim. Like you don't just go in there and say, hey, like super, super gentle, and then kind of feel it out. Like, okay, are we at a point in our relationship where I can give them a little bit of pushback, a little bit of constructive criticism to challenge some thinking, and we can enter in kind of a critical dialogue where they can challenge my thinking and we can still maintain a friendship and have a beer afterwards. Like, are we at that point? Are we at such a point that if I bring up anything to call gender theory into questioning, it's just going to incinerate any bridge that I'm trying to construct between me and this person? So that's why you can't just take a cookie cutter approach to the whole thing. You kind of got to walk with these people and see them not as kind of projects to be solved or mysteries, but more as mysteries of people to be loved instead of just problems that I've got to get this, I got to fix this person. You just got to walk with this person, because you know what? Maybe their gender dysphoria will dissipate in a matter of 6, 12 months, whatever, it could go away. And usually with kids, it does. 85, roughly 90% of the time, they'll come to identify their biological sex. Other time, it can persist well into adulthood, decades of wrestling with this. While they're still solid Catholics, practicing the faith, loving God, receiving the sacraments, even entering into marriage, but secretly wrestling with this on the side. And so what they need is not some walking Google to just give them all the statistics and disprove them, but kind of walk with them, because it can be a very alienating space in which to live, where their families might be like, what, you're trans, you're kicked out, you're living on the streets. Okay, now if you're a person on the streets trying to identify as the opposite sex, how are you going to find a job? Well, a lot of them find job in sex work, and which is very dangerous. Obviously, they end up homeless. They end up resorting to prostitution just to make ends meet. And it's an extremely dangerous lifestyle. And so they could already be dealing with a lot of hatred, a lot of violence, a lot of persecution from their own families, sometimes within the church. And so it's a real lifeline when they can actually come along to a Christian who, understands what the church teaches on anthropology, but can walk with them in love instead of just trying to disprove them with an apologetic argument.
Hi, this is Aruga of the Aruga Show. If you like what you just saw, please consider subscribing and smash that like button. We'll need all of your help to take back the culture from this ideological colonization of the West. Thank you.